Hey there! Before we get to today's episode, I want to tell you a little bit about me. I'm Aisha Ashraf, a journalist working from our new CBC office in Prince Albert. I'll be telling stories from the northern part of Saskatchewan. Whether you live near me or further south, we want your story ideas because we care about what's happening in your community. Email us at thisissk@cbc.ca. And one more favor, make sure you're following This is Saskatchewan on your favorite podcast app. Okay, enough of me. Let's get to the episode.
The government of India and Cameco have signed a major $2.6 billion uranium supply agreement supporting India's nuclear ambitions and our shared commitment to clean, reliable baseload power.
Prime Minister Mark Carney recognizing this new uranium deal as a win for Canada and our province. I'm Leisha Grabinski. This is Saskatchewan. It is indeed a pretty massive contract for Cameco, a company that's been mining uranium in Saskatchewan since the late 80s. Cameco first signed a 5-year deal with India in 2015. It expired right when the relationship between India and Canada started to sour. This recent trip to India, which included the Prime Minister and Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, was an attempt to strengthen our ties as trading partners. We want to sell our goods to India, uranium and pulses too. According to Moe, the trip was a success.
Saskatchewan's always a big winner when it comes to export deals, trade arrangements that are made around the world. Listen, we export to over 160 countries globally, and so and we have an interest in each and every one of them. This is our third largest, so yes, I do feel that Saskatchewan will certainly benefits from the understandings, the agreements signed today, but all Canadians benefit as well, and I think that's important for us to remember, as do Indian families.
So now analysts and people like me are trying to sort out what this deal will mean for the people who live here. Joel Bruno is department head of economics at the University of Saskatchewan.
This may not be creating new jobs, but it's going to be preserving jobs for sure. And that's a long-term vote of confidence in these northern communities and in the workforce up north there. So it's a big deal. 2.6 billion over 10 years, 9 years is a big contract.
There are numerous signs that the uranium industry is on an upswing. Denison Mines Corp just received approval from the Nuclear Safety Commission to start construction on the province's first new uranium mine in a generation. This mine would be in the Athabasca Basin, which is about 150 kilometers north of La Loche. That's far north. La Loche is close to 600 kilometers northwest of Saskatoon. Just days after we learned about the Denison mine, it was announced NexGen also has approval for a new mine in the Athabasca Basin too. So in short, there's a lot happening in the uranium sector. Not just because India sees us as a reliable source of power and energy, but other countries will likely come knocking on our door soon too. That's what Greg Peltzer is anticipating. He spoke to CBC host Candice Lipsky. Greg is co-director and professor at the School of Environment and Sustainability at the University of Saskatchewan.
This is really, really important for a whole variety of reasons. Obviously to our province in terms of securing, that the mining sector going forward. And with a new trade partner, given the disruptions in trade with the United States. So that's going to help Saskatchewan a lot. And if you compare our economy with Alberta, for instance, we're far more diversified. And this is strengthening the diversification and the economic sustainability of the province. So this is a massive win for our province.
How does this compare with the deal that Cameco signed with India back in 2015?
Oh, this is much, much larger. So when we're looking at the deal back in 2015, that was worth about $350 million. So we're looking on an order of 7 times larger. So this is a massive, massive deal, and it's really hard to overstate.
Let's break this down a little bit. Exactly how will this benefit Saskatchewan and its people?
Number one, of course, in terms of jobs, securing jobs into the future, and it's likely going to invite more mining investments because now we've had this difficulty, of course, with the Indian relationship, especially under the previous prime minister. It sends a market signal globally that we're a secure and a good place to invest in for the mining sector. But secondly, and very importantly, it's hard to overstate the impact in northern Saskatchewan specifically. And Cameco has been one of the gold standards globally in terms of working with northern and indigenous communities. And a lot of people don't realize that 50% of the workforce is northern, which is overwhelmingly indigenous. And that's going to secure northern futures. Over the decades that they've worked with northern companies, it's been over $3 billion worth of procurement opportunities for goods and services. So in terms of long-term growth in northern Saskatchewan, this is securing northern futures, but also helps to, it's a pull partner, the mining sector, in terms of the grid investments and the modernization of Saskatchewan's grids. So it has a huge ripple effect for manufacturing and other activities and other industrial sectors in our province.
Now, Cameco says this represents about 12% of its annual output of uranium ore concentrate. If that's the case, how likely are we to see an expansion of operation?
I think so. In whether it comes directly from the India deal itself, and it might be able to absorb what we have already mined, there's no question that's going to lead to expansion of uranium mining in the province. Absolutely no question about that. We look at Denison, for example, and the discussions there. So we're going to see an upscaling and expansion of uranium mining in this province. And I think this is a foundational stone for that expansion into the future.
What is driving this demand for uranium, Greg?
Two things. One is still climate change. We still got to get to climate change targets if we aren't going to bake the planet. And so nuclear energy is a really important baseload source. But the other thing is what our Prime Minister spoke about in Davos in terms of the New World Order, in the changing geopolitical realities. And one of the things I just came back recently from Europe, and particularly in Scandinavia, and there's a lot of discussion about uranium, and countries like Canada, people know about Saskatchewan, our uranium sector, in terms of providing secure energy from secure partners because of the Russia conflict and the war in Europe. And so uranium has a very strong future in countries like Finland and Sweden, but even Norway, which would have been taboo 5 years ago to talk about the uranium sector in nuclear energy. That's now part of mainstream public discussion. How
confident are you that some of those countries might come to Canada, to Saskatchewan, to access our uranium?
Quite confident. That is the discussion. So I think the Prime Minister's strategy, reaching out to the Indo-Pacific, and of course this deal with India, but also with Europe, bodes well for the uranium sector in Canada and the mining sector, but also the nuclear sector and nuclear technology, where Canada has historically been an important player.
The Saskatchewan Environmental Society opposes this deal, saying India refuses to sign and ratify the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. What do you say to people who have concerns about nuclear power?
Yeah, so on that one there, I think that's a fair concern to raise, and we should also always be concerned in terms of the non-civilian use of uranium. But I think it's really important we do this deal, all the more because they haven't signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So in 2008, the Nuclear Supply Group, a set of countries that are involved in that, gave an exemption to India for peaceful civilian use of uranium. And now if we're going to make climate change targets, and we don't want Russia being the primary supplier of India, in looking for other countries that have environmental standards, have concerns about the proliferation of nuclear weapons, I think this is the smart move, actually, to allay those kind of concerns and work constructively with a partner like India. So I think this is the right move to make.
Like Candace pointed out to Greg, the Saskatchewan Environmental Society has expressed concerns with Saskatchewan's rapidly expanding uranium industry. Peter Preble, a board member with the Society, thinks Saskatchewan should hit pause.
I and the Saskatchewan Environmental Society don't support this agreement. It's not that we don't support increased trade with India, but we don't support increased uranium trade with India. And the reason is that India has not signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. India has not signed the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. And those are the foundations for nuclear trade and uranium trade in the world. So, 190 countries have signed those agreements. There's no shortage of countries for Canada to trade with. But we should not be trading with India until they comply with both those agreements, and they have consistently refused to. So what's essentially happening in our view is that while Canada supplies India's nuclear power stations with uranium, we're freeing India to use its domestic uranium supplies, which are very limited, for building up its atomic weapons arsenal. So its atomic weapons arsenal has almost doubled since we signed that agreement with India in 2012 and began shipping uranium to India in 2015. India now has 170 nuclear weapons. And I think Canada should only be trading with countries in terms of uranium that sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty and that comply with those treaties.
According to the Saskatchewan Mining Association, 2,300 people in the province work in uranium mining, and many of those people reside in the north. Now there's hope even more jobs will be created. Here's CEO of Denison Mine, David Cates.
Canada's already a top producer, one of the top producers of uranium globally, behind Kazakhstan. The market is growing and is in need of new sources of supply. So I think there's more than enough room globally for Denison, Cameco, NexGen. What these projects do, all of them, the new projects, is they support the growing Canadian economy, provide excellent jobs to people in Saskatchewan, and they generate revenues for provincial, local, and federal governments. So, I think even our competitors are probably aligned on the fact that these projects are good. In terms of the market, I don't have a view that the added production will be negative for the uranium market. We have depleting mines globally. We don't have a significant number of mines in the pipeline to large-scale mines to come into the market in the immediate term. And so when we're talking into the 2030s for most of the new mines sort of outside of our project, which is before then, the market is, the demand picture and the supply shortage is even worse into the 2030s, and the projects will be needed.
To have construction approved for 2 mines is potentially a big deal for people who live nearby. In the north, life can be tough with few job opportunities. And so there's hope that construction of new uranium mines will lead to good-paying jobs. Keith Shuchuk is president of Métis Nation Saskatchewan Local 39. Métis Nation, along with several First Nations, have an agreement with NexGen to ensure that local people benefit.
Many of our community leaders have supported this, and I personally see a future for our youth and our new generations. I just see prosperity, and I'm very optimistic that we as Métis citizens are going to benefit from this mine.
NexGen Vice President Adam Engdahl says there are jobs now. He spoke to my colleague Jeremy Warren about the Rook I project in the Athabasca Basin.
What kind of economic spin-offs will there be during this construction phase?
Well, it's funny you mention that because the economic spin-offs and the economics for the communities that are working within the area, our partners that we're working with, our Indigenous partners, they're actually already feeling these spin-offs. Over 90% of our spend at the Rook I site last year was spent with Indigenous and local priority partners. Now, obviously, when we move forward in terms of the construction side, we're working very closely with our Indigenous partners to ensure that they're taking the opportunities to maximize these opportunities for not only just construction, but employment. And we've been looking at this and getting ready for this for years with our partners, the communities, and the government.
Yeah, I talked to one guy who said they're running out of people to train. They're going to start training dogs because they've been working on this for 2 years, right, to get prepped for this moment, right?
Yeah, you betcha. Those are some of the things we're doing. Back engineering from a start date from today. We've been training up in the communities, and one of the big things we've heard from the community members as we're trying to maximize local employment is they want to be trained at home. They want to work at home. The Rook I project's in their backyard, and we've had the opportunity over the past 2 years to bring trades training programs, environment and rad tech programs. And these are specific programs that are going to be utilized through construction and into the longevity of the life of the mine. So we're working with our local Indigenous partners and local community members to train them right now so they're ready and they can have lifelong careers at the Rook I project.
And just generally, like I think it was when I was talking to the Denison Mines CEO about uranium demand now and how these mines are going to be taking advantage of that. And he pointed out, and I think it'd be the same for you guys, that these mines have been in development for over a decade and well before this new sort of uranium gold rush, if you will. So does this more recent rise in demand or interest in uranium and nuclear energy, does that make this more profitable now than what you planned for like a decade ago?
Well, a decade ago, when we had the discovery, we knew we were onto something amazing in terms of the Arrow deposit. To find a uranium deposit, it's hard enough to find the high grade that we've seen with the Arrow deposit. Understanding where the world was 10 years ago to where they are now is a completely different situation. Now, like you're referring to in terms of David Cates speaking to the demand, I'll give you a perspective of it. Last year, there was roughly around 200 million pounds on contract in the world, where we only really mined 165 million pounds. So there's already a deficit now. And if you look at 2035 to 2050, where uranium is going to be needed because of the increased nuclear renaissance and increased nuclear demand you're seeing in countries from US, China, India. All these countries are going to require increased amount of fuel for those reactors. And these are reactors that haven't come online. So that demand is actually going crazy at the moment. And we're not even seeing what we're going to see in 2050. Now, that being said, a lot of times people are asking, hey, Arrow's putting out 30 million pounds a year. Isn't that going to flood the market? By 2050, we need 5 Arrows discovered to ensure that we can try to curtail that gap. Now, that supply gap is saying it took us how long to find Arrow and discover it and then put it into production? You're looking at a 15 to 20 year lifespan. So that demand is just going to keep growing.
Not all communities are backing these projects. For example, Birch Narrows Dene Nation and Peter Ballantine Cree Nation do not endorse the Denison project. Many Saskatchewan people know the uranium industry here hasn't always been perfect. Garrett Schmidt is executive director with Yethe Nene, an organization made up of northern communities, including 3 First Nations and 4 municipalities.
I think the communities have had mining in their backyards for many, many decades, starting with Uranium City, even Goldfields by Uranium City had a mine back in the 1910s, I believe, for a gold mine. And that evolved into uranium mining throughout the 50s into the 80s. So the basin communities are quite familiar with mining, both in terms of how it's done well and how it can be done really poorly and the environmental impacts that result from that. So I'd say there is some level of excitement and anticipation, but also a weariness, because they know if it isn't done in the right way, there can be real long-term meaningful impacts that we see to this day in some of the historical legacy sites that have real long-term generational impacts. So we go into it very much eyes wide open, that it can be a very positive things in terms of creating economic benefits, other benefits in terms of contracting and employment and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, they're also very mindful that it can really impact their culture and their way of life, and making sure that is balanced. So that's one of the reasons why Yethe Nene was established, was to make sure that the regulators do a great job, but at the same time, there's a lot of knowledge and insight that the communities have acquired and they needed to be applied to a lot of the new projects that are being proposed and being implemented currently. We're also interested in establishing large protected areas to make sure that there are some areas that the communities do not want exploration and development, because it could have very significant impacts to caribou in particular, and how that is a knock-on effect to their food security, their culture, and many other things that they rely on a daily basis.
Construction on the Denison mine will begin this month. The NexGen mine will begin this summer. Both projects will have to receive approval before they start operating. Cameco will start sending uranium to India in 2027. What do you think of Saskatchewan's expanding uranium industry? Send us your thoughts at thisissk@cbc.ca. I'm Leisha Grabinski. Take a second and be sure you're following This is Saskatchewan on your favorite podcast app. New episodes Wednesdays and Fridays. We'll talk to you then.